I'll be moderating today's press conference. Before we get going, I just have a few important reminders that many of you have already heard before, but here we go. To prevent disruptive and potentially harmful audio feedback incidents that can cause injuries, we remind all in-person participants to keep their earpieces away from all microphones at all times. When you are not using your earpiece, please place it face down on the middle of the sticker for this purpose that you will find on the table. Please consult the cards on the table for guidelines to prevent audio feedback incidents. These measures are in place so that we can protect the health and safety of all participants, including the interpreters, and conduct our business without interruption. Thank you. Today we have a weekly briefing from the site task force. I believe there's about 15 minutes of remarks, and then we'll move on to questions in the room. And then on Zoom, for those on Zoom, you could use the raise hand function to ask your question once I go to Zoom. All right, over to you.
Great. Good morning, and welcome to the final scheduled update of the Government of Canada's measures to safeguard Canada's 45th general election. My name is Lauriane Kempton, and I'm the Assistant Secretary of the Cabinet for Communications at the Privy Council Office. Je suis accompagnée aujourd'hui par Alan Sutherland, secrétaire adjoint du cabinet Appareil gouvernemental et institutions démocratiques au bureau du Conseil privé, Vanessa Lloyd, présidente du groupe de travail sur les menaces en matière de sécurité et de renseignement visant les élections, et Larissa Galadza, sous-ministre adjointe déléguée, secteur de la sécurité internationale et affaires politiques, Affaires mondiales Canada. Joining us virtually, we have Bridget Walsh, Associate Head, Canadian Centre for Cybersecurity, part of the Communications Security Establishment, Greg O'Hayan, Director General of Federal Policing, Security Intelligence, RCMP, and Anam Alvi, Executive Lead, Operations Directorate, Canadian Security Intelligence Service. I would like to acknowledge that I'm speaking to you from the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people. Je tiens d'abord à vous remercier de votre coopération pendant la période électorale. We have learned from experiences over the past few years, both our own and from foreign partners, and from Justice Oak's report, that the threats of foreign interference, transnational repression, disinformation, and cyber attacks are real and pervasive. This is happening in Canada and around the world. Notre meilleur moyen de défense est l'ouverture, la transparence et la mise à jour de ces tactiques malveillantes, de sorte que les Canadiens puissent renforcer leur résilience et exercer leurs droits démocratiques librement et équitablement. This was the first federal election for which Canada held weekly updates on the measures to safeguard the election, and I believe that our efforts have contributed to a more informed and resilient Canadian public. I want to thank the media for being with us every week and continuing to help share vital and factual information for voters. Media play a critical role in our democracy. Je tiens à remercier les médias de leur présence chaque semaine et de l'aide qu'ils offrent continuellement pour diffuser des informations essentielles et factuelles à l'attention des électeurs. As anticipated, there was heightened online political discourse over the past few days following the English and French leaders' debates. Canadians took to social media to discuss the issues that matter most to them. The overwhelming majority of this discourse was legitimate, reflecting Canada's robust democratic involvement. Néanmoins, il est important que les Canadiens demeurent vigilants au cours de la dernière semaine précédant le jour du scrutin. Nous continuons d'encourager les Canadiens à signaler la mésinformation et la désinformation directement sur les plateformes de médias sociaux. We also urge Canadians not to share or amplify inflammatory content without looking into the story first. Check your facts. Be alert for deepfakes, activity generated by bots, and cyber scams. We all have a role to play in protecting the electoral process. In previous briefings, we have spoken about transnational repression. Certain authoritarian governments reach beyond their borders to harass, threaten, intimidate, and even use violence against individuals they disagree with. We call this transnational repression, or TNR. Des gouvernements étrangers prennent pour cible les membres des diasporas et des communautés en exil, en particulier les minorités religieuses et ethniques, les défenseurs des droits de la personne, les dissidents politiques, les militants, les étudiants, les universitaires et les journalistes. The goal is to advance foreign interests and silence criticism and dissent. As outlined the first week of the election, the People's Republic of China uses a variety of tactics to carry out TNR activities. It leverages PRC-based family members to pressure those in Canada to cease certain activities the PRC views as hostile or to return to the PRC. It also threatens PRC-based family members with a range of potential coercive actions, including detention or financial penalties. La RPC mobilise aussi des acteurs étrangers pour surveiller des personnes au Canada et pour faire rapport à leur sujet. Pour appuyer ces activités de répression transnationale, la RPC a recours à ses missions diplomatiques, à des organisations communautaires liées à la Chine et à des dirigeants communautaires influents, entre autres. TNR is a particularly egregious form of foreign interference because it is used to suppress free speech and democratic rights. The Site Task Force has been monitoring for instances of TNR during the election. Unfortunately, the Site Task Force has seen continued transnational repression during the 45th general election, specifically in the riding of Don Valley North in the city of Toronto. En décembre 2024, la police de Hong Kong a annoncé qu'elle offrirait des récompenses monétaires pour la communication de renseignements qui mènerait à l'arrestation de 6 personnes vivant à l'étranger. We have been clear that this decision by Hong Kong to issue international bounties and cancel the passports of democracy activists and former Hong Kong lawmakers is deplorable. This attempt by Hong Kong authorities to conduct transnational repression abroad, including by issuing threats, intimidation, and coercion against Canadians or those in Canada, will not be tolerated. One of the 6 individuals targeted by Hong Kong is Joe Tay, Conservative Party candidate for Don Valley North and a known advocate for democracy and civil liberties in the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region. Since the bounty and arrest warrant were placed on Mr. Tay, members of the Site Task Force have noticed a persistent information campaign on social media platforms where Chinese-speaking users in Canada are very active. Ces plateformes comprennent Facebook, WeChat, TikTok, Rednote et Douyin, une application sœur de TikTok pour le marché chinois. Au cours de la période de scrutin, le groupe de travail a observé 2 tendances importantes liées à ce candidat. The first trend is inauthentic and coordinated amplification of content related to the bounty and arrest warrant against Joe Tay, as well as content related to his competence for political office. This content includes a mock wanted poster featuring Mr. Tay, as well as disparaging headlines and comments. We've seen that multiple accounts or platforms published or interacted with content at similar times and dates, sometimes within minutes or even seconds of each other. Cela crée un volume accru d'informations en ligne, ce qui augmente la probabilité que les utilisateurs de ces plateformes soient exposés au contenu amplifié. Confirming attribution can often take significant time and analysis, as malign actors go to great lengths to hide traces of their role in foreign interference activities. At this time, intelligence reporting indicates that one of the Facebook accounts involved in this activity, Today Review, is historically connected to the PRC government authorities and pro-PRC entities in Hong Kong. This includes links to the Central Government Liaison Office in Hong Kong. The second trend is deliberate suppression of search terms or keyword filtering censoring Joe Tay's name in simplified and traditional Chinese on certain PRC-based social media platforms used by Canadians. Le groupe de travail constate que des efforts sont déployés pour supprimer tout nouveau contenu au sujet de M. Tay et que lorsque des gens au Canada font des recherches au moyen de son nom, le moteur de recherche ne renvoie que des informations sur la prime et le mandat d'arrêt. While this campaign has been ongoing since the bounty was placed on Mr. Tay, we've seen that since the beginning of the election, the campaign has continued and been amplified. This observation, coupled with the concerning trend of deliberate search suppression on platforms frequented by Canadians, warrants our informing voters now. The transnational repression and its effect on the democratic process is not about a single act, but rather about the accumulated impact of many acts designed to discredit a candidate, silence criticism and dissent, and manipulate the information that informs voters. Nous avons informé le représentant autorisé du Parti conservateur de cette opération de répression transnationale à 2 reprises pendant la campagne, soit le 6 avril et de nouveau au cours de la dernière semaine, le 16 avril. We have also engaged social media platforms to inform them of our findings and flag where this operation may violate their terms of service. As we explained last week, it is up to social media platforms to decide and discuss publicly if they wish what actions they take in response. Dans le cadre du programme de sécurité des candidats, le gouvernement du Canada fournit des services de sécurité supplémentaires aux candidats qui se sentent menacés, mais dont le niveau de risque n'atteint pas le seuil établi pour justifier la protection de la police. At this time, the panel has determined that this operation is not affecting Canada's ability to have a free and fair election, including in this riding. Cependant, à la demande du groupe d'experts, nous profitons de l'occasion pour informer les médias et le public afin qu'ils soient au courant de ce type d'activité et qu'ils puissent prendre des décisions éclairées au moyen de sources fiables avant le jour du scrutin. By discussing it openly, reassuring Canadians that their vote is secure, and providing information on how to report TNR, we can mitigate the impacts. Nous voulons aussi que les électeurs soient conscients des torts causés par ce type de comportement inacceptable tant aux victimes qu'à la communauté. At the individual level, there is a profound psychological impact on victims who experience TNR. They might experience fear, anxiety, and stress due to continuous surveillance and harassment they face. En fait, le simple fait de savoir qu'un gouvernement étranger peut surveiller leurs activités ou causer de tort à leur famille peut amener les victimes de répression transnationale à s'auto-censurer ou à se retirer de la vie publique. At the community level, TNR creates mistrust and division. Targeted communities may become fragmented as individuals fear infiltration by foreign agents or retaliation for associating with activists. No Canadian should feel afraid to vote. That's why we're here to reassure you. Your vote is secret. The Elections Canada voting process is anonymous and no one will know who you vote for. Your vote is secure. Voting ballots are put into the ballot box where they are mixed with other ballots so they cannot be attributed to a specific person. Il est illégal de briser le secret de vote ou de menacer quelqu'un pour l'inciter à voter pour un candidat donné. Anyone who is receiving direct threats to their security or respecting their voting intentions, please know that there are supports in place to help you. Dès qu'il est sécuritaire de le faire, notez les détails de la situation, comme la personne, le lieu ou l'événement. Nous vous encourageons fortement à signaler tout incident au service de la police de votre région. You can also contact the RCMP National Security Information Network to report non-immediate threats. You can find out about the safeguards in place on Elections Canada's website and in the background material we have circulated today. Le groupe d'experts continuera de se réunir pour être informé par le groupe de travail jusqu'après l'élection. S'il y a quoi qu'il soit d'important à signaler d'ici au jour de scrutin, nous tiendrons une séance d'information technique supplémentaire pour informer les Canadiens. To maintain our commitment to transparency and to build resiliency, we will produce a report after the election which will summarize site observations, the threat landscape during the RIP period, as well as panel discussions on those matters. We will issue this report publicly once it is available. Au cours des dernières semaines, nous avons communiqué de l'information sur les différentes tactiques utilisées par les auteurs malveillants. We have discussed topics such as transnational repression, provided examples of coordinated, inauthentic online activity, and online threats like scams, phishing, and mis and disinformation. But we want to reiterate an important point. These activities are happening on a small scale. They have not reached the tipping point of threatening the integrity of our election, either at the national or the riding level. Notre système est sûr et nous avons mis en place des mesures rigoureuses pour protéger les candidats, l'infrastructure électorale et les électeurs. The threat actors have not succeeded. The strength of Canadian society is the ability for all of its citizens to be able to freely and safely participate in our democratic process. When Canadians head to the polls to exercise their fundamental democratic right, they can do so with full confidence in the integrity and security of our system. I want to reiterate again to all Canadians, your vote is secret, your vote is secure, and your vote matters in this free and fair election. It matters to the future of our country. À tous les Canadiens, je tiens à rappeler ceci une fois de plus. Votre vote est secret. Votre vote est sûr. Votre vote compte dans le cadre de cette élection libre et équitable. Votre vote est important pour l'avenir de notre pays. Thank you.
We will now move to the question period. One question, one follow-up. Start with Jim Bronskill from the Canadian Press.
Good morning. You mentioned a possible tie through Facebook to the Chinese government in the operation that you've explained today. Could you elaborate on that, and to what degree is this repression operation you've identified the work of Beijing?
And then I'll invite my colleagues to jump in. So as I said, attribution can take time. It requires a lot of analysis. And so at this point, what we can say is that one Facebook account has been historically linked to PRC and pro-PRC elements. And maybe I'll turn to Larissa if you have more to add.
Sure. Thank you. I think it's important to remember that the material that we're seeing now is mostly linked to the bounty that was placed on Mr. Tay in December of 2024. We know who issued that bounty and what's behind it, and that it is specifically about his advocacy work in relation to Hong Kong. So that is the nub of the content that is being circulated and recirculated and referred to in new material, and we know the source of that.
The bounty in question made headlines in Canada for other reasons through discussion in the context of the current election. Does any of that discussion in Canada, has any of that played into or amplified what we're talking about today?
I don't know that we've seen significant evidence of that playing into it. I think among the communities, the bounty is well known. What I would say, part of what has caused us to speak out today is the dual factor of the amplification of the information around the bounty, but also the suppression of Mr. Tay's name on some of these platforms. And so I think that's kind of more where we're seeing the impact. But Larissa or Vanessa, I don't know if there's more to add.
And the suppression is linked to legal requirements that platforms operating out of China have to suppress criticism of the PRC and of the Communist Party. So there's a link there, and as Lori-Ann said, this is something that we've seen more recently on the platforms, and is obviously a concerning trend.
Christopher Nardi from the National Post.
Morning. Happy to be here in person. I just want to re-clarify something that Jim said. So you mentioned one Facebook account, specifically you've tied to the PRC. The reading of this documentation heavily suggests that we think that the entirety of the transnational the search suppression, the repression, the bounty posters are linked to the PRC. Can you kind of explain that? You know, is the headline the PRC is undermining, or is it one Facebook account and then stuff is happening, but we're not sure who's doing it?
Vanessa, did you want to start us off, and then maybe Larissa?
Certainly. Thank you for the question. So I think the elements that my colleagues have mentioned this morning are important to underline. The purpose of transnational repression is to stifle criticism of the government that is executing that particular acts. And so in this case, in terms of the discussion that's been happening during the course of the election, we should keep in mind that it really is one party agnostic. So it is to stifle the criticism of the government and those that dissent against those positions in this case as it relates to the special administrative region of Hong Kong and of Mr. Tay particularly. Second, as Lori-Ann mentioned, sometimes it takes time to attribute that activity. What is important at this particular point in the campaign is that Canadians are aware that those two things are happening. One, that the dialogue around Mr. Tay is specifically being amplified as it relates to the position of the PRC government. So to counter information about, sorry, I'll go the other way around, to amplify the bounty, which is their statement with regards to the candidate specifically. And second, to be able to suppress information. So that means that Canadians need to be aware, one, that there is a narrative being amplified by the government, the PRC government, and two, that other information about Mr. Tay as related to his campaign is not as easily available, because what comes up in the searches is the information about the bounty as opposed to other information about Mr. Tay.
Number of other questions, so let me see which one I choose. You mentioned you mentioned that a lot of this issue is related to platforms that operated out of China, but Facebook and, well, TikTok is I guess arguable, but Facebook especially is not China-based, but the one account that you linked to the PRC is on Facebook. So what has been happening in the case of Facebook? Why is a Meta account so actively, seemingly engaged with the PRC to commit transnational repression? Do you know?
Larissa, did you want to?
So there are multiple platforms that are amplifying this information. The search suppression that we've seen is on platforms operating out of PRC, and on Facebook today we have the confirmation of the intelligence link for one of the accounts on Facebook, but there are actually many accounts on Facebook that have been amplifying the information about the bounty and about Mr. Tay.
We'll now move on to Zoom. A reminder, if you have a question, please use the raise hand function. I will first go to Ryan Tumulty from the Toronto Star.
Sorry, I hit a wrong button several times. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Hello? Okay, sorry, I'm terrible. You mentioned in the backgrounder, you put added emphasis on the idea that a Canadian ballot is secret. I'm wondering if you were doing that deliberately because any of the messages we're seeing from PRC linked accounts are trying to undermine the idea that the ballot is secret.
I don't know that we've seen specific messages from PRC linked accounts. I'll invite my colleagues to weigh in that say that. I just think we believe it's really important for Canadians, especially new Canadians who may be new to voting, to understand that the vote is absolutely secret. Their vote is anonymous once they cast their ballot. I don't know, Larissa or Vanessa?
I would add to that we understand how authoritarian regimes perpetrate transnational repression, and that their goal is to silence criticism and deny people their rights by scaring them. And so, as Lori-Ann said, in this effort to inform Canadians and to make them resilient, we are anticipating that maybe there is someone out there that has felt the chill of the bounty that was put on Mr. Tay, that understands well how PRC or another malign actor might operate in the world, and it's important for them to, and so we anticipate what that might result in, and this reassurance that the vote is secret, that votes should not be intimidated, is part of our mitigation efforts.
I think that's quite right. And through this process of the dialogue that we've had over the last couple of years as it relates to foreign interference, we are aware that never really before has Canada's diverse communities been so highly targeted by foreign interference. And so it's really important in this conversation that we're having that we provide the information that we provided today, but also the opportunity for those individuals in communities that may be subject of transnational repression by a range of hostile state actors to be able to identify how they come forward to report those instances where they may have felt harassed or intimidated, either in the course of this electoral process or more broadly. So in the elections process to the members of SITE and through the SITE 24/7 telephone line and website, and then more broadly after the election period to organizations like the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and the Canadian Security Intelligence Service.
You said as well in your remarks that you don't feel that this campaign targeting Mr. Tay reaches the free and fair election standard, either broadly or even specifically in his riding. But you've laid out a campaign that amplifies a negative message specifically against him, and that seems to be suppressing the ability of voters to gain positive information about him. I guess what more would have to happen for it to clear that standard?
I think I'll start by saying that, we've been monitoring this for a while, and until this point, the content has actually not generated high levels of engagement. But as we see it moving to additional platforms, still with relatively low engagement, we felt it was important to speak now. Advanced polls are open, I should say, and election day is April 28th. So we wanted to offer Canadians, especially in the riding of Don Valley North, the opportunity to get information from a reliable source. But maybe I'll turn to Al and see if there's anything you want to add on the threshold piece.
Your question speaks to the role of the panel and whether or not something is in violation of the integrity of the election such that the panel would step forward. The panel's been assessing this throughout the election campaign. It's been the subject of multiple discussions that they've had. It's important to know that the panel is also coordinating the government's response. So in that response, the panel has provided instruction, including to the SITE task force, to do a number of things. One of them is to have these technical briefings and through you to have engagement with Canadians. They've also provided instruction to engage the political parties, and that has taken place. Further, they've provided instruction to engage social media platforms, and that has taken place. And finally, they've provided instruction to engage diaspora groups that might be affected, and that has taken place. So as a result of that, a lot of transparency, engagement with those affected. It is the panel's view that this at this time does not meet the threshold where there is a threat to the integrity of the election, either generally or in this particular riding.
Okay, I will move on to Emily Hawes from the Globe and Mail. You can unmute yourself. Emily, I think you're unmuted. But
Sorry.
Yeah.
You can hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for taking the questions. Is Joe Tay a part of the candidate security program or otherwise getting any kind of security from the RCMP or any other group, if you could be specific?
So to respond to your question, the candidate security program is in operation. It is receiving applications. It is providing support where support has been asked. In respect to the privacy of those seeking that security, and as well to the security aspect, it would be inappropriate to discuss specific cases.
Okay, thank you. And as well, have there been any other ridings that you've seen transnational repression, even if it's not to the bar that you're saying Don Valley North is? And if so, what ones?
So at this time, we have not seen other instances of digital transnational repression.
Thank you.
I don't see any more questions from the Zoom. So one last call. Anyone, if you'd like to ask a question, please use the raise hand function. Okay, I will. Are there any questions in the room? Yeah, Chris, go ahead.
Don't really need to ask. I want to talk about Don Valley North, not the first rodeo in that riding, going back to 2019, I think, with the nomination races. At this point, at one point does SITE start thinking, okay, there's a more systemic issue in this riding? Again, you know the details of what's happening there much more than we do, but is SITE starting to get concerned that there might be a more systemic foreign interference issue in that riding? Have you put in place specific measures that are specific to that riding? Because clearly it just keeps happening, or keeps coming up at the very least in that riding. Can you tell me a bit more about Don Valley North specifically?
Vanessa, can I turn that to you?
Sure. So thanks for the question. I'll maybe start by saying SITE and all our members are concerned about foreign interference no matter where it happens across the country. The point of being stood up for the election period is to provide enhanced monitoring of the potential for foreign interference. When we spoke in the first week of the election, we talked about the types of things that we thought we might see, and that was indeed, as you referenced, based on our historical experience in the last two elections. And as Lori-Ann mentioned, we will come back after the election is concluded to provide an after-action report of what we've seen during the election, and certainly we can anticipate that that will be taken forward into preparedness for the next general election. I think in relation to the riding that you're specifically referencing, there is a lot of information about how foreign interference may have occurred during the last two general elections for that riding. And I would also issue the reminder that in those cases as well, it was not deemed to have affected the outcome of the election. And I think what is different about going through this election is that we are providing the types of information over a regular period that allow Canadians to understand where interference could be happening, and to be able to access both information through these briefings and through the Democratic Institutions website that help them understand how it could be occurring and how to engage in this electoral process. And so as it relates to the Don Valley North riding in particular, that is part of why we are providing today's technical brief to inform the potential voters in that riding about what could be happening and how they consider the information that they're consuming in advance of casting their votes.
I'll go to Jim Bronsko, I believe, has a question as well.
Ms. Kempton mentioned this off the top about activity around the debates that took place last week. And last week you were flagging the fact that there may be accelerated activity or things to watch around there. How did that play out given what you expected to see and what actually happened?
Thank you. We saw a fair bit of activity in the online space. It appears that most of it was legitimate. Canadians just very actively engaged following both the French and English leaders' debates. And so at this time, we have nothing to report in terms of concerns around foreign interference or inauthentically amplified content related to the debates.
Emily, I see your hand is still up on Zoom. I just want to check if you have another question.
I do. I guess I could go now. Yeah, okay. Will your report have recommendations, or is it just going to be a straight up report?
Oh.
So I believe you're referring to the after action report of SITE?
Yeah.
Yeah. Vanessa, do you want to take that?
So the after action report of site will talk about the threat landscape that we've seen through the course of the election, and provide a summary in terms of where we started our assessment, what we saw, and the information we've shared. Al, I don't know if you want to talk about separately the after actions that are required under the critical election incident panel
I
protocol.
was just about to do that, Vanessa. So there is an addition to that, because evaluation is really important to improvement, especially when you're in an environment that's changing rapidly. So there is, as part of the cabinet directive for the critical election incident public protocol, there is a requirement to have an evaluation. There will be one after this election that will include recommendations that will be considered on a go-forward basis.
Last call for any, Chris? Actually, sorry, Chris, I'm going to cut you off. I'll go back to you, but I see Stuart Bell from Global News has a question. I'm just going to unmute you. Okay. go
Sure,
ahead.
thanks. Has the task force seen any evidence of interference by either the government of India or its proxy agents in Canada? Anything like that?
Would you like me to start? Yes, okay. Thank you very much for the question. So again, I'll start by saying that when we gave our threat landscape assessment in the first week of the elections, we talked about a range of state actors that could potentially have an influence in the general election. In terms of and proxies were one of the ways that we talked about that that this could occur. Specific to where we find ourselves now, I would say that part of what we want to ensure happens during the course of the election is that we have a strong ecosystem of information that is available to all Canadians. And that means that for all of us, we are able to use information in order to form opinions, to hold government accountable, individuals accountable, and also to inform our public debate during the process. For India specifically, when we did our initial pre-election threat assessment, we considered the possibility that media entities in India actually could amplify false or misleading information that could polarize discussion during the election, and that this could include the promotion of or amplification of candidates whom the government of India either deemed pro-India or on the other end of the spectrum, anti-India or pro-Khalistan, excuse me. Indian foreign interference, as in the case of other actors, can be opportunistic. And this could occur either in the social media space or in the traditional media space. So what I would say we would want Canadians to take away with regards to any of that activity through a proxy or in the online space or in the real world space is that the focus should be now on countering any foreign interference. And the best defense to do that is by giving tools to Canadians to be able to spot disinformation wherever it comes from whichever sphere, online or real world, and from whichever actor that is state-based. And in order to do this, we need to make sure that Canadians are resilient. So again, we would encourage Canadians to use the tools that are on the Democratic Institutions website to be able to fact check, to spot disinformation when it's occurring, and to be able to confidently cast their votes.
Stuart, did you have a follow-up?
I appreciate the response, but I'll ask again, has the task force detected any concerning Indian government interference or interference attempts in the election by known proxy agents in the country?
Thank you again for the clarifying question. So we continue to monitor foreign interference wherever it comes from. And if there is an incident where we feel that Canadians need to be aware, we would come forward and brief at this panel. As Lori-Ann said, today is our last planned tech brief. But if we do see something of the nature you're describing, we would absolutely come forward and provide that information before the election.
Chris, did you have your question?
I'm looking at the list of platforms that you guys have engaged with related to this TRC, and I'm seeing at least one name that's come back now twice, WeChat. At what point are you having any success trying to discourse with platforms that seem, by all intents, to be deaf? Your complaints are falling on deaf ears in the sense that they are acting at the whim, potentially suspected, of the PRC. To what point do you think that engaging with them is worth anything or even having any tangible effect if it still seems like these, you've briefed Joe Tay twice. I suspect it's because you saw it and then you continued seeing it. And I'm going to infer that you've spoken to the platforms by April 6th as well, and then possibly after. So again, at one point it's falling on deaf ears and it's not a useful endeavor, and other measures have to be taken to prevent or to denounce this kind of activity from platforms that don't appear to be listening.
I'll start and then maybe I'll invite Larissa. I think it is important that we continue to engage with these platforms. What they choose to do with the information that we give them, we don't have the control over, but we need to continue to engage them so that they know that we have seen these things and we have flagged them, and we are doing this for the integrity of our election. But Larissa, you've had engagements. I don't know if you want to speak to anything.
We've had, and it's a really good question, but I think our responsibility is to do the right thing, which is to engage with them and to continue engaging with them. And I think that part of what we will look at in the after action report is how that went, and whether there's more that can be done. And we'll probably do things like deep dives into what we think their reactions were to the information that we provided. But we have to take this from all angles, not just the platform angles, but also diplomatic angles. And I think we've shared with you before that we have engaged the PRC representatives in Canada on numerous occasions, but also more broadly engaged the diplomatic representatives here in Canada about what constitutes appropriate and inappropriate behavior, and that includes through the digital information sphere. We did that in November. We did it at the beginning of the election, and we did it again midway through the election.
I see Ryan Tumulty from the Toronto Star has his hand up. You can go ahead. Actually, you can unmute yourself.
Yeah, hi there. I was wondering, you've shared this information with the cleared representative from the Conservative Party of Canada. I'm wondering if the information you provided is at such a level that he or she would be prevented from sharing that with the Conservative leader, who, of course, as has been discussed, does not have a security clearance.
Thank you for the question. So we have now given information as it relates to transnational repression, as we've said on 2 occasions, one in I think it was the 3rd brief that we gave in this setting, and then again today. And so you can understand that the same information that we've shared with you today was also shared with the Conservative Party, and we're doing that in an unclassified setting and with all Canadians so that we can all be part of the response that resists transnational repression as it could impact this election. And so certainly all leaders of any party could benefit from that information that we've shared with all Canadians today.
So there's nothing then in the briefing that you give to the Conservative Party that goes beyond what you've given here today?
The work of the Site Task Force looks at foreign interference as it relates to democratic institutions and democratic processes. And certainly you're astute in observing that information is both from classified and unclassified sources. And so briefs that we would give on any emerging issue could include both types of information. And that is why it is given to cleared representatives of the parties. And so to reassure you, in the course of this process, there are cleared representatives for all of the parties so that the parties can use that information to protect themselves during this particular process and support candidates in their efforts to campaign during the election. And in addition to the information that my colleagues mentioned that has been shared with diplomatic representatives, all candidates in this election received information once they were confirmed in the process by Elections Canada about a range of foreign interference that they should be mindful could occur, as well as mechanisms to report any concerns of suspected foreign interference, but also observations of potential for violent extremist threats against them during their campaign activities to the site task force. And all instances where either parties or candidates provide information where they suspect something is jeopardizing their ability to participate freely in the democratic process are being investigated by the site task force.
This concludes the press conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you.